Yeah, I think it's fair to say Oh Monolith has got a slightly more thoughtful and cohesive approach to the role of electronics and how they kind of govern the structure of our music. You know, there's more tracks that are played along to drum machine on Oh Monolith, and especially in the music that we've been writing since than we used to work with previously. And I think just bringing those like electronic timbres into the space, which is ultimately like a relatively traditional band setup of trumpet players, guitarists, and drummers. So yeah, I think we wanted to try and start thinking about the sections of songs as kind of changing rooms, walking from one space to another in the context of a wider piece of music and a wider album. Maybe it's most noticeable, um, on a slightly more macro level. But someone that I was chatting to recently had say about a monolith that to them it was kind of like a patchwork quilt with lots of disparate cubes and different short stories going on in the album, which I think is quite an interesting observation because stylistically and in terms of instrumentation we flit around on a monolith like we've never flitted before, and I think that's something we're really proud of.
That's good. One thing that and sorry to keep dragging the comparisons between the two, or at least referring back to Bright Green Field, but one of the things that I remember hearing you guys talk about was someone had asked you guys about like recording in Dan Carey's studio and like having all the gear and instruments available to you, and like what was like maybe the most unique or like the coolest thing that you added on it. And if I remember correctly, you guys just said there was a piece of pipe you used to bang on like the metal gate that I think was used for the beginning of GSK. And
Mm.
like I guess the epiphany was like amongst all those pieces of gear, the most basic like metal pipe on a gate was like what just happened to come to mind in that moment. So I was curious if there was a similar like weird thing that just came in that day and it was like, oh, we put that on that one song and that's like my favorite piece of the album.
Wonder what the monolith version is. That
Well, there was like, I mean, not quite in the same respect, but Roger Bolton was down the road. Someone who created played the first Fairlight synth on, he programmed it for Kate Bush and for like various others around that time. And he was having a drink at the local pub one night, and we'd already seen him, months before because we'd been recording in the rehearsal room, which was on the other side of a river from the studio that we ended up recording the record in. And he got chatting with Dan, and Dan Carey got very excited about him potentially recording some Fairlight, and Arthur, I know, had already been interested. So that was quite a spontaneous, new instrument that we hadn't figured before the 2 weeks we spent recording in Wiltshire. Maybe Roger Bolton is the equivalent of Bright Green Field metal gate.
yeah.
Very cool. So I want to ask you guys about that KEXP session you did too, because to me that's like one of the best sessions they have out there, and I feel like just visibly watching it, it seems like you guys are like pretty like focused and maybe like even a little nervous about that, and I think you guys maybe channeled that and like really drove it home, and like Cheryl Waters after is like emotionally welling up from it, and it just seemed like it was this like great live recording you guys happen to catch. So I was just wondering like what that experience was kind of like going into KEXP, recording it, kind of like the come down of it, all that stuff.
We were so tired at that point, tired and nervous because it was right at the end of the tour and like our first US tour. So we'd kind of been in the States in a van driving around doing shows every night for like 4 weeks. And originally we weren't quite sure whether that was the right time for us to do the KEXP session because we were kind of, Bright Green Field was out, but we were starting to play new music and we were thinking, is it better to come back and do this session, which kind of exhibits some newer music? But having said that, all of the music at that point from Bright Green Field that we were playing, we played loads and loads of gigs of those songs, so we were kind of keeping them fresh and trying out different ideas and different performance tools. So I think we'd driven from Portland that morning to Seattle, and we'd all tried to sleep a bit in the van, but when we arrived, we were like, God, we are tired and we need to get some energy now. So I think the nerves totally carried us on that show. Yeah, you can kind of see it in the performance. We all look a little bit apprehensive about anything going wrong, but no, it was I think we were, all five of us, incredibly happy with how that performance went, and even better to know that Cheryl she seemed to cock a hoop as well about how it was. She really liked it, which is great for us. A real confidence booster.